For a lot of them, they said online gaming spaces actually allow them to be their best selves with people they interact with face to face. Because they said we're able to kind of deal with some of our emotional stuff. If we've had a bad day, we can jump on the game and it kind of allows us to decompress a bit. So that when we're interacting with our families, we're able to have discussions and not have that kind of emotional response of how they were maybe feeling a bit before, which we found really interesting.
Welcome to the Research and Reason podcast. Join us as we discuss the latest research, news and opinion from academics in the Faculty of Arts and Education at the University of Auckland.
Kia ora koutou, ko Julianne Evans, aho. I'm Julianne Evans, the Media Advisor for the Faculty of Arts and Education. And today I'm talking to Dr. Jean M Uasike Allen, a Senior Lecturer from the School of Curriculum and Pedagogy here at the Faculty. And her current focus is young female Pacific online gamers and how online gaming contributes to their well-being and to their relationships. Malo elele, Jean. Lovely to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Tell us a bit about your background to start with, where you're from yourself. I know South Auckland is your community and where you've done a lot of your study.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. Malo e tau lava. My name's Jean. I'm the eldest daughter to a Tongan father who came here in the 70s and a New Zealand European mother. I was born and raised in South Auckland, and it's a community I continue to live in and raise my two children. So it's always held a special space for me, coming from a community that has often been represented in predominantly negative ways in media and in aspects like that. So my interest, I guess, in South Auckland, in the South Auckland community and youth, really started with that, with this interest of coming from a community where I knew that there were lots of positives and lots of strengths, a diverse range of people and cultures. And I was really interested in how can we bring a more nuanced perspective to understanding this community that I love and I live in. So that's really what's driven a lot of my research.
Fantastic, because it is a very lively, buoyant, diverse sort of community, isn't it? And for people who don't know, who lives there?
As you say, it's very diverse. So often we can think about South Auckland as a very brown community. And yes, there are large numbers of Pacific people that live there and migrant people. But there's also what we need to think about is the complexity of people. So a lot of people aren't just one ethnicity. We know that from statistics data, from our census data. So like myself, my father is Tongan, but my mother is a New Zealand European. So, you know, I am a mixture. I have all these complexities that make up who I am. And that's really how we need to think about our communities, is that we're not just one static representation or image. We're a range of people from a range of backgrounds. So we don't have time to probably go into all of those complexities, but I think that that's just really how I would represent our community, is that we are vibrant, we are young, and we're complex and we're nuanced.
A lot of the research you've said about Pacific communities ignores the voices of young people, and you've just said you're a young community, and you want to look at Pacific women, young girls who have been online gamers, who are online gamers. Now, why in particular that particular field of research? Because you've got a Marsden-funded grant to do this, I believe, over the next 3 years, which is fantastic. Congratulations. How did this come about?
So I guess as a mother of young people who game, it's always kind of been something that I've been interested in, especially pre-COVID. I think there was this discourse or this kind of idea that being in front of your screen was a bad thing, that, you know, too much screen time, people need to get off their screens and go and do these other things. Then I feel COVID hit, and all of a sudden it was suddenly acceptable to be on our screens, right? Working from home all hours, trying to continue going and things like that. So it really brought to the forefront for me, well, you know, what is going on in these spaces, I'd seen for myself that gaming actually became a place where my children especially were able to remain connected to their friends, even though we were socially isolating, even though we weren't able to, go out and be in community and be with people. So it kind of got me thinking about, yes, there are these issues and these concerns that people have about gaming, and I'm not dismissing that and saying that, there aren't real concerns there. But I became really interested in, what are some of the positives that can actually come out of these communities and these interactions, especially for our young people and our Pacific young people? How are they engaging in these spaces, and how can we really bring those perspectives to the forefront in the hope that we can potentially, through understanding, possibly harness some of these understandings in other areas like education and places like that for the betterment of our people so that they can thrive. So that's really where my interest came from.
It's such an interesting area too, isn't it? Because I don't know how much it's been studied. I mean, it must have been studied in a wider international way, has it?
Yes, there is quite a lot of international research around online gaming, and I guess that's the thing. There's a lot of research around gaming at the intersections of gender, at the intersections looking at age groups. However, there hasn't really been much around looking at Pacific populations like Pacific young people. And I guess that's what I'm really interested in, is not only looking at what's happening for these people, but trying to understand what's happening through a Pacific worldview and through some of our Pacific, or want for a better word, Tongan, because I'm Tongan, concepts. Like, how is that embodied in these online gaming spaces?
How are they doing this? Are they playing in groups? Are they playing one-on-one with each other? And what kinds of games are they playing?
Yeah, so the Marsden is yet to be started, but prior to the Marsden I did do a pilot study, just a small study, focusing primarily on Pacific youth, so not taking a gendered approach like I am with the Marsden. And we just worked with a small group of people, but what we're really focused on is what we call multiplayer games. So the games where young people are actually playing online with other real people around the world. So they're not gaming by themselves against the computer as such. So it's quite a specific field that we're looking at, or space. So a lot of young people are playing, sporting games like FIFA, basketball in, NBA 2K, games like that. Fortnite's always a classic one, and if you believe it, Minecraft, especially even with older youth, they're still very interested in games like Minecraft. And so really it's they're engaging with each other in these sorts of spaces, so across a range of games.
And do they have groups that they play with all the time?
Yes, we are finding that for some of them, they are developing relationships with or play with the same group of people. Sometimes in some games, they will join where you're playing randomly with people all over the world. But for some of them in the pilot study that we talked to, there are specific people that they will often game with. When they jump on their games, they will often message whoever that person is or the group. Often they have these groups set up online where they'll message and say, hey, we're jumping on. Do you want to jump on and game? So it's a little bit mixed, but yes.
And did you find that they were getting a bit of resistance to this gaming from their parents or from their wider community?
Yes, I think that's one of the key concerns, is that for parents, like all of us, myself included, we do have concerns, because we think about, what are the effects of this, If we think back to, especially when our children are younger, all those sorts of key messages like stranger danger and things like that. Whereas
Screen time,
go and be more active, Traditionally, sometimes gaming was also thought as quite antisocial. However, I think that's changing. It is actually becoming this really social space for them to interact with.
There's a lot of conversation around it, isn't there? Because my son, he's 19 now, but he used to, get online and play these games. And there was always that sense that he was strategizing and talking and responding and reacting. And there was a lot of conversation and excitement involved in it as well.
Definitely. And I think that's the thing. The young people we spoke to in the pilot study really talked about. That was one of the key things we asked them. What do you want adults in your life to know about your gaming practices? And the work is yet to be published, but we're aiming to publish it this year. But one of the key findings was that for a lot of them, they said online gaming spaces actually allow them to be their best selves with people they interact with face to face. Because they said we're able to kind of deal with some of our emotional stuff. If we've had a bad day, we can jump on the game and it kind of allows us to decompress a bit. So that when we're interacting with our families, we're able to have discussions and not have that kind of emotional response of how they were maybe feeling a bit before, which we found really interesting. And when we're talking about young people, these are young people still in high school. So, the fact that they're understanding and have this kind of awareness of what gaming is doing for them. But they did talk about how a lot of their households, a lot of their parents and guardians still have very much this attitude of this is a waste of time, get off that game and do something more productive. So they're kind of having to navigate that space.
And there is that sort of, there's a hierarchy of games too as a parent, isn't there? Because I remember for me, I had a bit of a ban on anything that I thought was too violent, too misogynistic, had horrible names for women. Surely we can think of what some of those games might be. Grand Theft Auto and those kinds of games. Is there that sense among that community that some games are just not okay for them? They've decided that themselves, or their parents have decided that?
That wasn't really apparent in the pilot study. It might be something that comes out in the Marsden. But I do think you have touched on something there that is kind of what has brought me to my interest in the Marsden and looking at Pacific girl gamers, is that in our pilot study we only had one girl gamer engage with us, whereas we'd done a survey that we'd sent out throughout New Zealand, as well as Tala Noa, small group discussions. And so I found that really interesting because we know that, there are girls who are gaming, and I use the term girl gamer in a very broad aspect. I know, I have a background in relationships and sexuality and health education, so I understand that these terms can be problematic. But in that online gaming space, it is very much the term that is used predominantly, so that's why I use it here. I just wanted to foreground that in case there's some questions around that. But yeah, so that's what brought me to the interest in this study, is because I really wanted to know, well, what's going on in the space for them? There is a lot of research that you have, kind of touched on here, where gaming spaces can be hostile for women. There is misogyny. There are these sorts of really aggressive discourses that sometimes go on in these gaming spaces.
In the games themselves.
Yeah, as well. And so, why is it still a space that, where young Pacific girl gamers can still build this community, and potentially how does it still contribute to their well-being, even though there's all these sorts of things going on. So I guess that's kind of the nitty-gritty of, what I'm really interested in and finding out about as well.
That is so interesting, because I might assume, because I don't have a daughter, that they might play different games and that different games might appeal to them. But maybe also they're playing all those games that boys like as well, the FIFA and the 2K and all of those. So
yes, and there's been quite a few YouTubers, female YouTubers who are playing games like Call of Duty and, first shooter games, which are traditionally known, as quite male-dominated games. War games and things like that, who are recording their gameplay and putting that online and, really trying to shed light on how they are treated as girl gamers in these games, and especially if they are quite good at these games, then the kind of backlash that they can get from some of the people they're gaming with. So they're definitely out there. Some of them are trying to really disrupt this space, and so I'm just really interested in kind of finding a bit more about what is going on there.
That's so interesting.
Yeah,
because it's got so many facets to it.
It does. Yeah.
Their own relationship with the game, their relationship with other people playing the game, their relationship with boys who are playing the game, and then the aspect of their parents and how that's viewed by their parents. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you had an interesting idea that might be new to some people, and the word might be the concept of the digital VAR. For people who don't know what that is, it's spelt VA, isn't it, with an accent on the A?
Yes.
How is that best described in Tongan or in?
Yeah, sure. So the VAR, which has been written about quite a bit, is a concept that is known across some Pacific countries and nations, but to explain it simplistically, it's really about that space between people or space between things. So it's really, if we think about it as a relational concept about how you maintain, in Tongan we would say tauhiwa, how you maintain and nurture that connection between. The digital is really about understanding, well, how does this relational aspect between people, between space in that space, or between things, how is that nurtured? How is that developed? So there's been scholarship already around digital VAR. So people like Associate Professor Jacoba Matapo, AUT, or Dr. David Whaavai from our university as well. They've written about these concepts as well as others. And how really it's about how is that relationality, that nurturing, how does that happen in digital space. There's quite a bit of research around how that's done, especially during COVID times when we were all jumping online. We were keeping connected with people who are in different countries and different places through the internet, through like Facebook and things like that. But my understanding from doing a bit of a scoping review around online gaming that I'm looking at in this multiplayer space, this concept hasn't been applied to that space before. So I'm really excited to kind of get into that and think about what does this actually look like in the online gaming space for these specific girl gamers.
That's interesting. You're groundbreaking in this then, aren't you?
Yeah, okay, if you want to say that. I don't know if I would say that myself. I mean, I've been very lucky that I've been able to work with amazing scholars who have done a lot of this work and have these conversations and things like that. So, you know, it's definitely not alone on my own. I've been very fortunate to have amazing mentorship and people who have gone before me in this specific space to kind of lead the way. And so really I'm just, you know, trying to walk beside them and do my little bit.
Carrying them on your shoulders, is that, or no?
Yeah, so sometimes we talk about that. We say about, you know, standing on the shoulders of giants. But I've had a colleague, Fatoi Sefo, who actually has really challenged that idea a little bit of, do we really want to stand on our ancestors, or do we want to kind of walk alongside them more? So, yeah, it's something to think about with some of those philosophical questions.
Have you got an idea yet how you're going to run the study, which is going to take the next 3 years of your life, I'm assuming,
yes,
and perhaps include people other than yourself?
Yes.
And will it continue to focus on the Pacific community here in Auckland in New Zealand, or are you going to go out to the diaspora, or how is it all going to work?
Yeah, so for this study, I'm just focusing specifically on Aotearoa, New Zealand. So the project has a few phases. So, but I guess the meat of it, or the exciting part, is what I'm hoping to do is I'm hoping to recruit between 8 to 10 self-identifying Pacific girl gamers. And what we're going to do is we're actually going to record, or get them to record their gameplay. So actually in the game. And then we're going to work together to really analyse and start looking at some of the interactions that are happening in their gameplay and how we can see how Pacific ideas like digital VAR or VAR, how that's been enacted, or, you know, moments where relationality is being developed or that space is being nurtured in the actual gameplay. So it's quite different. It's exciting, but also a little bit nerve-wracking to hopefully, you know, you sometimes make these plans and have these proposals and you just hope that, you know, it'll work how you anticipate it working. But, you know, I'm excited and I feel like I'm up for the challenge to give it a go. So
definitely. Have
yes.
you got some recruits already?
No, not at the moment. So we're still in the very early stages of the project. So we are hoping to start recruiting by the end of this year with the idea that we will start that process of data gathering next year. So
how many people would you be looking for roughly?
Yes, so we're only for that part of the study, only looking for 8 to 10 because we're wanting to record gameplay over a certain period of time. We're wanting to then sit down and have discussions and work together to really analyse alongside. I think that's a really important aspect, is that we're not only using these specific or utilising Pacific concepts and worldviews, but we're also engaging with these Pacific girl gamers to say, actually, this creation of understanding of what's happening here isn't just about me as a researcher.
It's about them.
It's about them. What do you think's happening here, So we're working alongside. And I think that that's really important in regards to, ownership of this, even though I can say, I got a Marsden and I'm doing this awesome stuff. It's really about community, and that's what I'm really, focused on and really underpins my research, is that it's not just about me, it's actually about how can we do this together in ways that benefit us all.
How old will these girls be, do you think?
Yeah, so for the project we've specified 16 to 24-year-olds. So that's kind of like that's really if we're thinking about youth, that's how we've kind of defined youth. No one come for me. You can be as youthful as you like at whatever age. But yeah, so that's how we're just really trying to put some parameters around this. So 16 to 24-year-olds, self-identifying Pacific, girl gamers who live in Aotearoa.
How do you feel that this research is ultimately going to change things in the community? Because I imagine in 3 years' time you must have an idea of the end game and how this is going to work for the people that you've been talking to and for the wider community, for parents, for schools.
Sure. Yeah, totally. I think... Well, gaming's one of those things I don't think is ever going to go away, as much as we might have, this complex relationship with it. It's such a billion-dollar growing industry, globally. However, what I would like to, achieve, and as part of this and ongoing, is really trying to bridge those gaps between Pacific gamers, and with the Marsden Pacific Girl Gamers, but Pacific gamers in general, and the communities they belong to, like their family, their kāinga, their extended families, their schools, adults in general. So what I'd really like to do is be able to take this research and these findings and really say, well, okay, this is what young people are saying, potentially it would be important to also find out about, parents' perspectives more, and, what are they wanting to talk to their young people about? What are their concerns, and how do we bring that together? How do we potentially create, I say resources because I come from an education background, but, something that really helps our communities to be able to have these conversations, to be able to raise concerns in a way that doesn't shut down necessarily conversation, but goes, okay, how can we come together with this and kind of negotiate and figure out a solution that for the betterment of everyone? And so I think that that's why, as a first step, really understanding what's going on in this space for young people is really important, because we can't really have those conversations until we really understand that from their perspectives. But yeah, I do hope in the future to really bring in parents and also health educators as well. So how can we actually take what we're learning, gaming, device use, all that sort of stuff in schools we know is of a concern. And there are potentially issues as well as positives around that. But, how can we then really use this to help inform and make things better, maybe through education, through awareness, things like that?
Because it is that space between the kids and their parents. I don't know if you'd call that the vibe between them, the
definitely.
Space between. Because, I think it's very easy for parents, having been one myself, to just shut down the whole concept and not see the benefits of it and the fact that it's here to stay, and we might as well realise that and see how it's working and how and the positives of it, as you say.
Exactly.
Because to shut it down is to stop the conversation.
Exactly.
And to not learn things.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that there aren't real concerns with gaming, or that, as you say, as myself, as a parent, I'm not saying that I've been perfect in this or, but I do think that, there are people doing this great research and looking at those concerns. And I guess for me, it's more about how can we take these strengths, come at it from a strengths-based approach to really build on that and focus on that to make things better.
That's a good place to stop, I think. Thank you so much, Jean. It's been very interesting to talk to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
You've been listening to the Research and Reason podcast. Stay up to date with the Faculty of Arts and Education by following us on social media.